Today, OpenAI just announced Agent Builder, which is their new low-code automation platform for building AI agents, and it looks pretty cool, but I want to see if it's actually worth all the hype and walk you through the core features of how it actually works. If you're new here, my name is RJ. I've been a software engineer for about 2.5 years, and I recently moved from Amazon to a venture capital-backed startup where I build marketing automations using both code and software systems, plus low-code tools like Zapier at N8N, so I feel fairly qualified to review this product. Let's get right into it. Okay, I have never been on this page before, but when you come onto Agent Builder, this is the opening screen. It gives us a few examples of a couple default workflows we can look through, or we can create our own. For now, let's just pull one of the default ones so we can poke around and see how it works. I'm going to choose the customer service agent. Okay, this user interface looks pretty familiar if you've worked with low-code tools before. It's basically a step function where data flows from the left to the right and moves between different nodes which have different capabilities. Let's start off by looking at a quick example of how this works, and then we can break down the capabilities of each of the nodes. All right, let's try out this workflow. Now, this is a customer service agent, so we're going to start by asking it a customer service related question. Okay, so as we can see, it's starting off with a jailbreak guardrail, then a classification agent, an if statement, another agent, and a user approval step. So I can help you with that. We can offer you a replacement device with free shipping. Please provide your order number and the reason for return. Okay, that sounds reasonable. This does work for me, so I'll say approve. And that ends the workflow. Okay, interesting, but let's walk through the different steps and what actually happened here. The first thing we have is a start step, which makes sense for beginning a new workflow. And it seems we can have input variables. In this case, the only thing we have is the input as text, which is what I put into the preview there when I asked it a question. Now, the second thing we have here is a jailbreak guardrail. It looks like we can control various things here that we want to check for, and this is a pretty nice step to have built into these type of workflows. So it looks like we have options for all the common things you would try to do, and this hallucination one stands out to me. I could see this being useful just as an end state in an agentic system to make sure that it's responding with data that you've used throughout your workflow. Okay, so the next thing we have is the agent step. Now, as you can see, this is one of our core 3 steps we have up top. For the agent step, looks like we can give it a name and instructions, and this is basically going to be a system prompt. This is where you can put on your prompt engineer hat and make sure that the agent is going to behave exactly as you want. So it looks like all this agent is meant to do is classify information. Now, a few of the notable options we have here are the include chat history. Now, I see we also have a model selection, and not surprisingly, these are all models from OpenAI, and if you do choose to go with Agent Builder instead of some of the other low-code tools people use to build agents, you're going to be vendor locked into OpenAI. If Anthropic comes out with another new model tomorrow, you will not be able to use this agent with that stuff. So that's a pretty big caveat here with this system. Now we also have an end step here. It looks like we can add multiple end steps to end the workflow at any time, which is pretty nice. Okay. One other thing here is the Tools tab. Let's look at what tools we have available. So let's say we want to use an MCP server. So we have a couple tools from OpenAI. These look like standard Google and Microsoft integrations. This is pretty limited. Like having Google Drive does give us a lot, but this is not a ton of connectors that we have access to off the bat. We also have some third-party that are not created or maintained by OpenAI, and I assume more and more people are going to be adding these third-party connectors as this application gets more mature. But for release, this is pretty bare bones and a lot less than a tool like Zapier has with, I think, over 7,000 integrations pre-built. It also looks like we are able to add a custom MCP server. So if you wanted to create your own MCP server and specify it here, it looks like you're able to do that, which is nice. Now, one more thing is the output format. It looks like we can choose between text, JSON, and a widget. I'm a big fan of this. If you're building these workflows, I recommend pretty much always using JSON or a widget. If you're using plain text to pass information between agents, like, don't. There's no reason to do that. More. Okay, we can also kind of fine tune the model a little bit. We can control the temperature and the token count. Okay, this is pretty nice. This is a little bit more control than I feel like you get with some other automation systems, which makes sense as this is tailored for agent building, not general automation. So the next step we have here is a condition step. This is a standard step. This is an if statement if you're a software engineer, a switch statement, whatever you want to call it. It basically allows us to branch on various conditions. So here they're just using it to classify the user's intent and route it to another agent. This is a standard strategy for context management. Instead of having one agent do everything, we use multiple agents so one agent's context window doesn't get overflowed with junk data and then the performance starts to degrade. This is called context rot. Anthropic has a great report on this if you want to read. Anyways, next we move to our various agents here, and these all have pretty bare bones system prompts. They're all using the same model, and this one actually has tools. So let's look at this function here. Okay, so we are able to define a custom function to do something. This is a pretty nice feature. Let's see if we can make this happen. So we need to, in order to reach this step, we have to do something like act like we're going to quit our subscription to whatever this is. I want to cancel my subscription. Okay, so the jailbreak runs, classification agent. This should classify as retention or cancel subscription. Yep, I'm sorry to hear you're considering canceling your subscription. What service plan are you currently on? I have an internet plan. Okay, so every time we chat, it reruns the entire agent. Could you please tell me the name of your current internet plan? Interesting. Gigabit Ethernet. Let's see if this exists. I just completely made this up. I should have looked closer at the function. Wow, this is pretty good. So it's nice that it's able to kind of go through the chat history and run this entire workflow every time somebody makes a request. I could see this being fairly useful in the future, but yeah, I think if we had a while loop step in here too, we could like skip the classification and make it continue to run the retention step. Because here, for example, it doesn't really make sense to continue classifying the conversation after I've already declared that I want to cancel my subscription. So for an example given by OpenAI, it does seem a little strange, but hey. Okay, let's close the preview for now. And okay, so as you can see, we have these multiple agents, and then we have this user approval step, which this just looks like a manual Boolean true-false step, which we saw at the beginning. And yeah, we also have these little note card steps if you want to comment on your agent. I noticed I don't use any transform step here, so let's take a look at what this data transform step can actually do. Okay, it looks like we get basic common expression language to create a custom expression. Let's learn a little bit more here. Okay, so we can write small, powerful expressions to inspect and transform our data. Okay, so we can access variables, perform comparisons. Interesting. So it doesn't look like we have access to like crazy string manipulation or anything like that, like you might with the ability to run a full Python script. I would be surprised if they didn't add a code step in the future. If you wanted to work around that, you could just create an MCP server with given tools to execute code if you want. But that is a little bit more work than tools like Zapier, where you can just add a Python or JavaScript step and have it execute ready to go. Let's also take a look at this evaluation tab here. So to get here, we just click the evaluate button, and yeah, it looks like it is able to trace all of our responses. And okay, this is really nice actually. We can evaluate what's taking up more time in our workflow, and obviously this costs money, so time spent is money out of my pocket. So this is a great place to know what's taking up time, how we can reduce things, how long our agents are taking. We can also create a grader. Okay, so let's use GPT-5 for the grader and say pass if the agent resolves the customer's issue. Let's try running this. I think it maybe resolved my issue once, but let's see how it is able to grade these past 5 executions. Fail. Okay, cool. Yeah, I would say this is reasonable because it actually never did resolve my issue as I ended the conversation before that happened. But yeah, let's try grading all just to see if it's able to see if any of these were resolved and how accurate this grading actually is. Okay, 0 out of 5 passed. This kind of makes sense as it never really properly resolved a single issue that we had, and I could see this being a pretty useful way to evaluate larger scale agents or workflows in the future to make sure things are actually working as expected. Let's take a look at the fine-tuning tab here. Okay, so here it does look like we can use fine-tuning to adjust our agents, and I assume we can use the agents we fine-tune here in Agent Builder, which is a pretty nice feature, and again, goes to show you how these workflows are more for building agents than building automation. Yeah, and I think that pretty much does it for my review, as currently OpenAI's built-in MCP servers are completely broken because this is the first day it was released, and I can't really build a system. So if you do want to see me build out a simple system in the future, I was thinking something like an automatic agent that can read through my emails, classify brand deals, and sort which ones are good, and maybe automate the email outreach to brands that I've looked out to or I wanted to work with in the future. If that sounds like something you want to see, feel free to comment down below. Or yeah, if you guys have tried this and have different thoughts or opinions on it, I'm happy to hear them. Right now, my overall impression is that it's clearly a new product. I mean, the user experience is okay, not super intuitive, and it feels like some of the features are a little bit lacking compared to other platforms. But Obviously, OpenAI does a pretty good job of iteration right after their release, so I'm expecting in the next 3 to 4 days this to get a lot better. If it is 3 to 4 days from now, let me know if that's happened. If you guys want to see more content, I usually focus more on software and system design, but I might do a little more AI in the future, so feel free to subscribe and check out the rest of the channel, and we'll see you guys next time.